Hi everybody, this is Steve Castro from ClickShake Games. We've seen a lot of videos from Jay recently, and so I thought it was about time for me to do a video of my own. Just got a big batch of art from Jay recently, and just now finished up getting all of it imported into the master Ballads of Reemus file. There's a lot of synchronizing involved and setting things up so that my code can control all the characters and things like that. So got all that set up, so basically all ready to program everything that has been sent over so far. So everything I got so far is Act 1 and Act 2, all of the art from both of those acts. And this game is a 3-act game, so pretty much once I get that last batch of art from Jay, then all that's going to be left is for me to program the thing. So there is a decent amount of programming that's required to make an adventure game, more than you might think. Although, in all fairness, a lot of the time spent developing this game is going to be on Jay's side, just developing all of the art that's involved, because it's a very art-heavy game. And the programming isn't as intense as something like an action game for something like this. So, the programming the different scenes is actually going to go a little bit more quickly for me than it is for Jay, especially since I've built up a really nice point-and-click adventure game engine. I actually started this a couple of games ago, and it was used in Reemus 4, and I've slowly but surely been honing this engine to really work well for these games. So this engine handles things like the chat bubbles and automatically normalizing the width of the chat bubble and aligning the text within it, making the characters walk from one place to another, sequencing animations and the timing of that. So most of the engine is really, really solid. And so me programming these scenes is going to go a lot faster. And I know Jay is a large part of the way through Act 3 as far as doing the animation for that. So we are hoping that we can get this game, close to being finished in the next couple of months here. So, don't hold me to that. We'll see what happens in the near future. We'll definitely announce once we hit these major milestones, like getting all the art finished, getting Act 2, 1 and 2 completely programmed. Those are going to be major milestones, and you're going to definitely hear it right from us as soon as that happens. So that's pretty much what's going on. There is a lot done already on the game, but there's a good amount that's still left to be done. But I just kind of wanted to talk about game development in general. Just so you can kind of get to know me as a developer and as a programmer. One thing I wanted to talk about was a lot of times people say that game development is not an art form, or that games themselves are not art. And I definitely feel that it is definitely an art form. When I'm involved in a game, I pretty much put my all into it. I try to make this thing fun and funny, and I try to make it intuitive. There's so many things that go into it. I basically feel like I'm pouring my heart and soul into this. And then at the end of the day, we finish everything, we put it out there, and then we just wait for the critics to come, the players, and they give us their scores and they give us their reviews. It's a pretty tense moment there at the end. And so that's why I feel like it's such an emotional process. Not only is it very emotional at the end of the project cycle when you're releasing it to your fans and hoping that they like it and hoping that the reviews are positive, but actually the whole development process is very emotional for me, because basically at first it starts with an idea and you're really excited about this idea, just thinking about all the cool features that you could have, and I would say that's like the peak, one of the peaks anyway. And then as you get into the process, I think like the first working prototype is a really exciting moment. You don't have any polish, none of all the crazy little intricacies. But you just have like this core idea, and it's fun, and you're really excited, and it's new and it's fresh. But then after that point, you basically have to start putting some meat on the skeleton of the game. You basically get into a process of tweaking, the physics, the environment, some of the AI. Maybe you start working on menus, and maybe you run into some kind of crazy flash bug and you have no idea what in the world is going on. And that's when things start to slow down. I would say, past the halfway mark in the game, you really hit this really slow part of the whole development process. And I gotta say, it's a lot less exciting, it's a lot less glamorous. And a lot of times it's the point where somebody who's just getting started in game development is likely to get frustrated and possibly even give up. And, this is definitely like the low peak on the roller coaster ride of game development. And sometimes I actually get into this really dark place, especially as a programmer, because I have to basically keep maybe thousands of lines of code in my mind almost simultaneously as much as I can so that I can understand, how it's working, how it's supposed to work, and try to figure out how it is working, if it's a bug I'm working on or something like that, if it's crashing or, if something's just not working right. And so like I say, I go into this really dark place where my mind is so wrapped into this code and so deeply entrenched in just trying to keep all parts of this thing in mind so that I can actually understand it and make some sense of it. It's almost as if I'm unapproachable, to my friends and family and things like that. And so, but basically, you just got to keep pressing forward. You can't let the scope get out of control. You got to stick to the plan, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Eventually you get to a point where your to-do list finally starts to shrink and finally stops having more and more and more things added to it. And that's an exciting moment as well, because you get through, a lot of the difficult polishing, and you really get it to a point where you're happy and getting closer to releasing it. And that's when it starts to get exciting again. You start anticipating that release date and things like that. So the whole entire thing is very emotional. I know as when I try to do art, I feel like that's very emotional for me, just the very subjective nature of art. And so I know it's got to be very emotional for Jay. But even for me as a programmer, I think every little thing I do is a very emotional part of it. I think another thing that makes game development like an art form for me is I really enjoy taking art that's lifeless, almost like a dead body. The matter's there, all the working parts are there, but it doesn't have life until I come in and breathe life into it with my programming, with my code. And that to me, it's a very emotional moment when I can first see, characters interacting with each other, you know, having a life of their own, maybe even doing things that I didn't even anticipate as a programmer. And those are the moments when I just laugh and I feel as if I've created a life of its own. Um, there was a moment where I wasn't expecting it, but one of the characters had walked off screen, and I pretty much expected him to stay off screen. And then he actually walked back onto the screen and just like punched the guy a second time. And I just totally wasn't expecting it. I didn't think the game had it in it to do that, and it did. And it's just, I can always trace it back to why it happened, but just seeing those things, it's cool, it's fun and it's interesting for me. So anyway, there you have a little bit of an update on what's going on with Ballads of Reemus development. I talked a little bit about, how I feel about game development and stuff. So hopefully you guys, you just get to know me a little bit better from that and everything. And, hopefully you'll be seeing more videos from me in the future. But for now, I'll be catching you on the flip side. Take it easy.